as the St. Louis Blues continue to build their next contender for a Stanley Cup. The prospect pipeline is probably more important than it's ever been. And with the NHL draft coming up at the end of June, it's time to reflect and look back on the season that Blues top prospects had this year. How did they perform in their respective leagues and on their respective teams this season? Which players had standout seasons? Which big names performed or didn't, like Snuggerud, Dvorsky, Jiricek, Lindstein, and Stenberg? Did any prospects disappoint? Are there any glaring weaknesses within the Blues system? And when can we see some of these names up in the NHL? We'll talk about all this and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. It's John and Alec with you as per usual. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We go live twice a week. So we talk all things St. Louis Blues, and if that sounds like your kind of thing, then you should definitely follow along with us because we are talking off-season content. The NHL draft is at the end of the month of June, and then at the beginning of July, free agency begins. So the off-season is about to really pick up here as the Stanley Cup wraps up. Trades can happen at any moment, and so if you want to keep up with off-season content and see some speculation as well, then the best way to follow along with us is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the best way to help us out. Like this video. And then if you're listening on audio, we're on Spotify and Apple, so you can follow, rate, and review wherever you listen. You can also find us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We post a lot of other great stuff as well. So be sure to follow along with us on all those platforms. But Alec, it's been a while. Been a little bit since we chatted. Some life stuff, I guess, kept us from talking. But how are you feeling about the Blues prospect system right now? Because as I said, it's pretty important as they're trying to sort of turn the page on the whatever, and really build a contender. We've seen some of the young names like Snuggerud and Dvorsky get a taste this year. Zach Bolduc was a huge part of the team this year. Tyler Tucker carved himself a role. There's a lot of young guys that are sort of going to be really important for the next few years of Blues hockey. So how are you feeling about sort of the state of the Blues system as a whole right now?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I think there's a lot of really interesting discussion to be had about just the state of the system. And I'm excited to break it down today. I guess for those of you tuning in live right now, at least in the St. Louis area, maybe watch from your basement. It'd be a good idea. As I look out my window, it's absolutely pouring down rain right now. But the Blues prospect system, I think, has a lot of depth. The high end talent is maybe a little bit more limited, but there's still a conversation to be had there. I think this can go a number of ways. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Where do you think the system? I mean, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. This isn't something we really talked about, but like relative to other teams in the NHL, other organizations, like where do you think the Blues system ranks? Because I kind of see it close to middle of the pack, maybe like probably a little bit higher than that, but like it's not necessarily the best of the best, but it's not horrible either. Where do you see it, uh, NHL wide?
Yeah. Sorry, I just bumped my mic if there was a little bit of bump there. Um, I would say top half for sure. Um, and I'd like to say higher than top half, like top third, maybe a top 10 system. But there's been a lot of really good systems that have, in the past couple drafts, have really knocked it out of the park and sort of elevated their standings from where they were. I would say Minnesota is one of those teams that probably took a bit of a jump. And as funny as it is, maybe Buffalo too. But I think I think top half is pretty safe to say, and I would say somewhere in that 15 to 10 range, more so than that 10 to 5 range. Um, yeah, but still like a very very good system with a lot of depth and a lot of pieces that are intriguing, whether or not they're intriguing to the Blues or to another team. They're definitely intriguing and could be leverage.
Definitely, definitely. So we're gonna break down, as I said, all of the Blues sort of top names in their prospect system. What kind of seasons do they have? Could we see them at the NHL sometime soon? What's their ceiling? we're going to have those kinds of conversations about a lot of these big names within the system. And why don't we start right at the top? And I want to ask you because there has been some debate over who really is the Blues' top prospect over the past few years. I think what we saw this year, it's pretty clear in my mind which one that is. But do you think there's any debate between Snuggerud and Dvorsky? Some people even put Yurchek in that conversation. I don't know if we can say that anymore. But who do you see as the top prospect in the system? I think that's where we should start our discussion.
I am a Snuggerud guy. I think it's really preference between Dvorsky and Snuggerud. I think Snuggerud's more of a power forward scorer. Dvorsky's more of a center who's like a playmaker, creative. And I think Dvorsky is probably the this is putting me on the spot, but Dvorsky is top 5 on the Blues already in terms of hockey IQ, which is
Hmm.
insane as a
Yeah,
19-year-old. 19? No, he's 20. 20?
he I actually don't have it pulled up in front of me right now.
He just finished his age 19 season. Right. Um, so that's insane as a 19-year-old. I think there's a lot of excitement with Dvorsky, but I think there's a little bit more variability. I think Dvorsky could end up being the best prospect out of this crop. Also, for the record, we are counting guys like Jake Neighbors, Zach Bolduc as graduated prospects. They're not going to be part of this discussion, I think. Um, but yeah, I think Dvorsky definitely has the highest ceiling of any Blues prospect right now. But I think Snuggerud is a little bit more certain and is definitely going to be a goal scoring threat. So should always earn NHL minutes.
Hmm.
Um, and so for that reason, I think Snuggerud is going to have the opportunity, and I think Snuggerud is just a really. I mean, they're both really fun players to watch. You can really go both ways, but I'm
Yeah.
personally a Snuggerud guy. There's just something about a power forward that knows how to use his body like Snuggerud does that just does something to me.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like maybe you think Snuggerud has the higher floor, but Dvorsky could have the higher ceiling. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I like Snuggerud a lot too, and I think what we saw from him on the Blues this year in a playoff run was really impressive. I think he really showed his worth as like a top prospect. Showed maybe that he belongs on the Blues from now on. Like we'll talk about that for sure. But with Snuggerud, just to sort of recap the season that he had before coming to the Blues, um, he returned to the University of Minnesota. He played 40 games, scored 24 goals, had 27 assists, so that's 51 points. And obviously, they were eliminated from the NCAA playoffs. So a disappointing end of the season for Snuggerud, at least when it comes to college hockey. But then he got to join the Blues for a playoff chase and then a playoff run, and had again, not like a necessarily standout performance on the Blues when you look at the stat sheet, um, but was playing top 6 minutes through it all. Um, and in my mind, I think he really did look the part. He looked ready when it comes to sort of his composure on the ice, his sort of hockey IQ and things like that. Like he looked mature enough to play NHL minutes. It wasn't like Dvorsky when he got called up mid-season and didn't quite look big enough or old enough. I don't think we really saw that with Snuggerud. I think he really did look ready. And I mean that playoff experience could be so valuable for him playing 7 games against a team as good as the Winnipeg Jets were this year. Playing in a great series like that one, really great. And I think what we saw from him that we hadn't really seen before were some flashes of like playmaking ability. Some people projected that could be a part of his game, but we hadn't really seen it, especially at the level that he displayed um, in that playoff run. So, what's your take on Snuggerud's season? Like, how do you think he performed this year? And then, I mean, the big question here to me is, do you think he will start the 2025-26 season? Do you think he'll start next season on the Blues in St. Louis?
To quote a very wise man, Sam Kohler, James Snuggerud is really good at hockey. I just absolutely love watching Snuggerud play. I think he's just unbelievable. And I would say he had a fantastic season. Going over a point per game in the NCAA is definitely not unheard of. It's not like mind-breakingly good, but it's very good, and having a good playoff run too in some really key moments. And then having a good playoff run with the Blues. I don't
Hmm.
think necessarily put up the point production of some other forwards or Cam Fowler. But I think Snuggerud showed that he can hang at the NHL level, which is another point. Actually, I'll make this point when I get to Dvorsky. But with Snuggerud, I think he just is so NHL ready. He's now had 3 seasons of playing at the University of Minnesota, and in every season been around or a little better than point per game. So 22-23 was 50 and 40. Next season was 34 and 39, so a little bit under. And then last season, right back up to 51 and 40. So like absolutely been dominant at the NCAA level, one of the best players in Minnesota hockey franchise history, and it showed that he's ready for the NHL. And I think he was ready after last season, and Doug Armstrong thought so, but Snuggy wanted to stay at Minnesota, felt like he had unfinished business, and unfortunately couldn't get the job done for him and his um, desire, his drive, but the skill has always been there, and that extra level, that extra year in the NCAA did add a little bit more expectations with Snuggerud that he really has to show that he's ready for the NHL. But
Hmm.
like, boy, did he! I think he's going to get significant run next year, and I think he can be a great third line winger, like already as now going to be 21-year-old.
Yeah, and Matt thinks he's gonna be on the top line, be
I would
a
love
wing
that.
for
I
Robert
just think
Thomas.
that we have too much winger depth, which is a point that I'd like to make. I was thinking about making in some of these episodes. Maybe I'll save it for another one. But if you look at the wing core of the St. Louis Blues, it is unbelievably stacked. There's just so many guys that are under contract and have the potential. I personally too, Matt, would put him on the top line. I just don't think that Monty and the Blues will, given his age and experience, because there's so many good wingers.
Army seems to really love Snuggerud though. I'm really excited to see how he continues to develop. And one of the big stories with him is that he just continues to get like that little bit better and better each season. Like we knew he had a great shot, both his one timer and his wrister. He's got great skill. He's got compete, which is something you really can't coach into someone. Um, and yeah, I think he looks ready for sure. I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw him start top six. But yeah, like you said, if the floor is third line at least for a guy his age, that's really impressive. And so super excited to see um, what we get out of Snug moving forward. Let's move
Snug's
on.
awesome.
Yeah, James P. Snuggerud. Let's move on to talk about the other top guy. And if anyone watching live has any questions about these guys or any thoughts that they want to add in the chat, we'd love to make it discussion. Make it conversational as well. So please don't hesitate to do that. Let's talk about Dalibor Dvorsky though, who kind of had an interesting season in that he came up to the NHL at one point, didn't really look ready, and so was sent back down. But he played 61 games with Springfield this year, um, and in those 61 games, he had 21 goals, 24 assists, so 45 points. Um, and I think like I said, I don't think he looked quite ready, but he did show potential. Like you said, his hockey IQ is really solid. We saw that on display a couple times. Like I'm thinking in that Preds game, his debut, there were a couple plays there where he really helped create some offense. He didn't get the assist on that one goal, but his sort of playmaking is what started that and made that possible. So um, yeah, I mean, how are you feeling about I was going to say Snugger Dvorsky's chances to make the NHL next season? It seems like maybe another year in the AHL for him. Do you think he'll make the NHL next season? And yeah, what was your take on his season as well?
I think the thing with Dalibor Dvorsky is Blues fans are going to need to exercise a little bit of patience. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for Dvorsky to really blossom into the player that we all think he can be. The fact that he's getting run in the NHL at all, even if it was 2 games as a 19-year-old, is should say enough. I mean, the kid is unbelievable, but it's still probably going to take, you know, 3 years or so before we see Dalibor Dvorsky, the 2C that we all think he can become. Because there is a lot of development to go with Dvorsky. He's still very raw. One thing with Dvorsky that sort of is emblematic of this to me was that he started the season in the AHL, or once he made it to the AHL, he started the season so hot that he was just like
Mm-hmm.
absolutely scorching point per game, and then started to slow down as the year went on. So I would be very surprised if Dvorsky makes the team coming out of camp. I think he's going to have to absolutely light it up to earn a roster spot, and even then, he's probably a fourth liner. That fourth line spot could arguably be up for grabs, but I feel like they're gonna stick with Sonny. And at least Sonny like brings that Jim Montgomery physical, punch you in the mouth hockey versus Dvorsky. That's just not really his play style. That's something that would have to be coached into him over a year. Um, so at least like Sonny can bring the sort of intangibles about playing 4C that could go a long way. So yeah, I think Dvorsky's going to really, really have to impress to make the team coming out of
Mm-hmm.
camp. So I expect him to have another season in the AHL, and honestly, I think that would really be good for him. I think having another full season to blossom and essentially dominate the AHL would be awesome for Dvorsky and his development. And I think getting even potentially bringing Springfield back to another playoff run. Unfortunately, got bounced this year, but if they could have an extended playoff run in Springfield more so than St. Louis, that might be really helpful to him because you look at what he did in the World Juniors, 9 points in 5 games for Team Slovakia. That's
Yeah.
some serious. That is almost 2 points per game in the World Juniors.
Mm-hmm.
But again, playing against like junior competition, so that's why I think another AHL playoff run can let his creativity develop a little bit more. I think with Dvorsky, you just have to be really careful because he has the size, but he doesn't necessarily have the body control yet because he's so young and is still like learning how to use his frame that he's just grown into.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, with the other thing with Dvorsky is for almost all of his hockey career, he has been one of the better players on the ice at all times. And he sort of, at least in the AHL, that was kind of what you saw with him slowing down towards the end of the year was he just kind of assumed that he was better than the other guy across from him, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So I want to see Dvorsky challenged, and I want to see him have to almost earn a spot on this roster because I
Yeah.
think that could be really good for his development. I think it's going to take time with Dvorsky. I think he's going to be awesome. I mean, his potential is like stupid good. Um, but and like I said, I think he is the highest ceiling of any Blues prospect. But I do think it's going to take a couple years before he really becomes the player we know he can. Next year, I'd expect, I don't know, maybe 20 games in the NHL, maybe in like an average year,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit less. I don't really expect to see a ton of Dalibor Dvorsky on the St. Louis team, and I think that's fine. You don't want to mess up his development because he is a player with more variance, but his upside is just so tantalizing. And I think he showed everything that we wanted to see out of him this season. Next season, I think we want one more season, using a lot of season here. I think we want one more year of development playing with competition his age and size so that he can learn how to use his frame.
Yeah.
Because the hockey IQ is all there. Like I said, I think he's already one of the smartest players on the Blues roster. It's unbelievable. But
Yeah.
I think the physical traits are going to take a little bit longer to come along.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that we've heard from Doug Armstrong about Dvorsky is that they want to be really intentional about his development. They don't want to mess it up. They want to get it right. And so I kind of I kind of feel like that line of thinking lends itself more to like a slow play of the kind you're sort of describing here. Um, Especially if that results in him becoming like your long term option at second line center. Um, and with Dvorsky through the past couple seasons, the big question seems to be whether or not he could remain, he'll be able to remain a center long term, or if he will have to sort of shift to the wing. So, I mean, like after this body of work that we saw from him this year, how are you feeling about his chances to be a second line center long term for the Blues? Um, I mean, because that's arguably their biggest need right now.
Yeah. I'm honestly more resolute and more confident that Dvorsky can become a 2C in his career and a great 2C in his career than I was before. Because again, Dvorsky was just so raw coming out as a prospect. Was just dominating like competition that was worse than him, but didn't really have a chance to play against guys at his skill level. Um, and I am absolutely more confident in his ability to become a 2C. I think again, just that playmaking is something that you don't ever see for a guy his age. And is something like that's just so rare to find, especially at his, decent size too. I'm so high on Dvorsky. I think 2C is maybe not even the ceiling anymore. We now I hopefully that 1C spot will never have to be taken over, but I'm saying there's at least a chance that he could have the skill to be a low end 1C, which is exactly the kind of player you'd want in your second line center spot. Because of that playmaking, he's almost like a 6'1" Marco Rossi type. And, Rossi's all the news right now. Um, he's defensively, he's okay, league average probably. Um, in the faceoff dot, he's had some struggles, but I think again that's still him learning his body and learning how to use his strength. I think that was the biggest just general struggle for him this year was you saw his strength get a little bit taken advantage of. And that's just not something you expect out of a guy who's 6'1", 206. I'm just gonna return to the fact that he's a 19-year-old kid. Like he's still learning what it's like to skate on a 6'1" frame and use his size like that. Maybe he won't ever be this dominant physical, you know, face-off monster who's defensively excellent, who plays so hard behind the net. But again, more that like skilled playmaking Marco Rossi, almost like kind of a little bit diet Robert Thomas. I think Thomas does a lot of other things that Dvorsky can't, but they are comparable in some ways. Um, Thomas more the complete package. Dvorsky maybe doesn't have everything that Thomas could, or Dvorsky could, whatever. Anyways, um, I think he can stick long term at center. I think one more year in the AHL will help cement that. But just the his ability to control the pace of play when he was on the ice, that's exactly what a center looks like.
For sure. And then, given the nature of where we're at and sort of the NHL calendar, there's a lot of trade rumors and trade chatter going around. Um, how willing are you to part with Dvorsky in a trade if it's for a good piece? Obviously, if it's for a great piece, you're probably willing to do it. But like, what are your thoughts on trading Devo away? When he could be so great.
So it really, to me, I see this similarly as, um, I see this similarly as the Tage Thompson deal. Like, if you're not bringing in a Conn Smythe caliber player, I'm probably not interested. And or like an equivalent player, young aged player. Um, if there was a more proven Dylan Holloway out there, I think that's who I would
Mm-hmm.
look to. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would I don't know if I wanted to put like a percentage on it, maybe like 10 to 20%. I'm trading him, 80% hang on. But there are some deals like if you can get, I don't know, Natchez maybe or Nyes or something of that caliber, then maybe I'd be more interested.
Sure. Yeah. Always for the right package. Okay, let's pivot to talk about some other big names. I want to talk about like a trio of guys here who I think we could probably put in like the next tier if we were to sort of do this in tiers. I think Dvorsky and Snug are in that top tier of the Blues system, and then the next one down is in my mind, Jiricek, Lindstein, and Stenberg is sort of the next one. We can debate, but these are some of the other big names in here. Let's start with Adam Jiricek, who was obviously the first round pick for the Blues in last year's NHL draft. And the issue with him seems to be just staying healthy. He in his draft year missed a lot of time with a knee injury. Played in the OHL this season for the Brantford Bulldogs, and saw some injured stints as well this season. But he did end up playing 27 games. He got 12 points, so 4 goals and eight assists. Um, really, like the profile with Jiricek is he's one of he's a more mobile defenseman. Really in every direction. He's pretty active. Decent offensively when it comes to like his shot and his speed off the jump, that kind of thing. He's got length. That's another strength for him. Um, but as I said, health seems to be the concern, and it seems like he hasn't been able to put together a great season in a little while. It's been a few years since he's had really like a standout season. Um, is it too soon to say that he's a bust as a prospect? Like, how are you feeling about Jiricek after this season?
Yeah, it's too soon to say he's a bust, but it's not looking great. I don't think necessarily um, that he's. I think the upside is probably still there. Maybe his ceiling dropped a little bit, but his floor definitely lowered a decent amount too. I don't think there is a chance that he's a total bust. I am interested about Jurich. The other thing I'm interested about Juricek is as a Czech, I am sort of assuming, but I think it makes a lot of sense given that this is not typically the type that um, Doug Armstrong has drafted in the past. This feels more like an Alex Steen guy and is someone that I'm really being critical of through that lens of evaluating Alex Steen. And when the puck pick was made, I was very critical. And so I'm still trying to, now that he's in the blue system, trying to be very, positive about it. The
Mm-hmm.
other thing we have to consider is he's only 18. It just finished his age 18 season. So there's still a long way to go for Jiricek, but didn't have the year you'd want. Played only 27 games in the OHL and put up 12 points. That's okay. Um, did put up 5 points in 9 games, or 5 points in 7 games in the World Juniors, which is fantastic for a defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you see the ability there, the playmaking, the puck moving, and transition into the offensive zone. Um, yeah, you see the potential.
Right.
Uh, so it's definitely too early to label him as a bust. I think it's just there is, I would say with Yurchek, we're at a yellow flag level. I think
Mm.
one more season of him playing injured, not underperforming, is red flag. And then the next season after red flag, we can say he's a bust. So I'm still 2 seasons out from giving up on Yurchek, but there's a lot of development to go, and it's mostly physical, just staying on the ice. And yeah, like I said, I'm at that yellow flag level to where you want to see a little bit more. But when he plays on the ice, it's not bad, especially for his
Yeah.
age. So I would say, I would say he could eventually become a pretty good NHLer, probably. If you want to talk about like floor and ceiling, well, okay, floor is he's a bust. Ceiling, I don't know that he'll ever be able to take on top pair minutes is the thing. I just don't know that his
Mm-hmm.
body can do that. But he essentially has the skill to be a number two defenseman, like a top pair, like a Cam Fowler, or someone like a Devin Taves. Honestly, is sort of the comp that I would say on the high end for Yittechek.
Mhm.
Maybe not the shot of Devin Taves, but everything else. I think that's the high, home run swing that Doug Armstrong took by taking him 16th overall. And that ceiling is still probably in there, but he's got a long way to go. He's also very raw like Dvorsky, so it's going to take a lot of patience with him. On top of that, there's the injury question mark, which is why there's a lot more variability. But I think he didn't have a nightmare season. So that is always a plus. And um, yeah, you can still. I think it's not naive to remain hopeful about Yittechek, just also recognizing that he's got a long way to go.
Yeah, I think the thing with him is he didn't light up like the stat sheet offensively as much as we were kind of hoping he would, as sort of more of a mobile defenseman who has some some offense to his game. But a lot of scouts still really liked how he looked on the ice, even this year, like in Brantford. They thought he looked very good, and maybe hasn't popped off offensively, but still was like playing solid minutes. He's had some good stretches, but yeah, I think I agree. He's got some growth that he definitely needs um, before he'll be able to crack the NHL. But why don't we pivot now to the guy that Matt in the chat is more excited about? Another, I guess probably like could has a case with your check for the top defenseman prospect in the blue system right now, which is Theo Lindstein. And Theo Lindstein to me is just like the image, or like the prime example of just maybe not spectacular, but just solid. He's solid. Like, and it seems like all aspects of his game are decently developed, and he doesn't have necessarily any like significant weaknesses. Doesn't have any crazy huge strengths, but I mean that can be a winning player for you, right? Offensively speaking, this season in the SHL, played 44 games, had 4 goals, 5 assists, so that's 9 points. In the playoffs, he did have 17 games played, 5 points in those 17 games played. So, you know, not terrible. Um, he's a Swedish guy, right? So there's the Swedish connection. This seems to be a little bit of a theme with the Blues right now, is um, the Swedes. But I mean, like I said, Lindstein isn't flashy, but he's solid. He seems to make decisions well. Doesn't take too long to make those decisions. I think what I like from him is his defense. As we both know, I really like defense. Um, but he's still got a little bit of 2-way ability, like secondary offense, that kind of thing. What do you like about Lindstein? Do you have any thoughts on the season he had? And I mean, he's how old now? He's 20 years old. So I mean, he's still on the younger side. Like, when can we expect to see him? Like, do you think he'll make a stop in the AHL soon? And do you think that would be probably the path for him to sort of make the NHL eventually? Uh, yeah. What are your thoughts on Lindstein?
Yeah, and I want to add he's a recent 20 January, so
Yeah.
he just sort of finished up his age 19-20 season, so he'll still be 20-21 next season, so very very young. Lindstein is like slightly better Tyler Tucker. Lindstein is like second pair Colton Parayko.
Mm,
Lindstein
just what we need.
is yeah, Lindstein is like Neil Pionk kind of. I mean, he is just like, as you said, the highest floor prospect that they could have taken, which I think makes sense after taking Dvorsky and Stenberg. Stenberg maybe somewhere in the middle, but sort of a medium floor but super high ceiling guy, who's looking like he probably won't reach his like maximum upside, which would have been crazy anyways. But Lindstein was just like high floor, low ceiling, standard, very similar. Oh, who was it that I wanted? Maybe Quentin Must. No, not Musty. Anyways, getting way too much into it. I was so in on the defensive crop last year.
Hmm.
Um, I think he was drafted by the Flames or the Rangers. If someone in the chat knows who I'm talking about, just a super defensive. defenseman prospect. But anyways, yeah, Lindstein is just like doesn't have the offensive goal scoring of Colton Parayko, but is otherwise second pair Colton Parayko. He'll never be a top pair guy. Or well, he shouldn't be a top pair guy probably. But yeah, honestly, like Lindstein doesn't need a lot of development, if I'm being honest. I would probably say maybe one more season of largely being in whatever league they want to play him in. I mean, he was playing in the SHL like against grown men, so that is pretty good competition. So honestly, like I kind of see him maybe sticking in the SHL, but you could see him getting a call up sort of down the stretch if the Blues aren't in a tightly contested playoff race. Or to be honest, if there's like injury replacements, Lindstein could be like the seventh or eighth or ninth guy, depending on how the off season goes. Yeah, he doesn't need a lot more defenseman. Just like you'd like to see his IQ come along a little bit more to be a little bit more responsible with the puck in the offensive zone. But defensively, he's got it. Coming out of the defensive zone, he's really, really got it. Never going to be a goal scorer or a point producer. You know, he'll probably cap out at 30 as like a career high, but he is like I could stick him. I think we could stick him on the third pair for 30 games and sort of not really notice him, and that's a really good thing to say about a 20-year-old defenseman. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love defensive guys, so I'm excited to see him. I'm with Matt. I like him. Um, okay, let's talk about the next sort of Swedish, not sort of Swedish, but the next guy who sort of gets I guess paired with Lindstein, which is Otto Stenberg, another Swedish prospect who this year split his time between, well, didn't split his time, but started in the SHL and then finished in the AHL. So in the Swedish Hockey League, he played 25 games, 3 goals and 3 assists in those 25. Nothing really to write home about, but came over to the AHL and I think, looked a lot better. 38 games, 5 goals, 12 assists. So in total on the year, 63 games, 23 points. Center, winger prospect. This is, I mean, what do you like? Where do you want to take it with Stenberg? Because I think you probably have more thoughts on him than I do. I mean, good skater, good hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think of Stenberg and his sort of development so far, and maybe where we could see him end up?
So Stenberg is similar-ish to Nathan Walker. Doesn't have that honey badger mentality who's going to set a franchise record in hits, which is a very big part of Nathan Walker's game. So that ish is a very large ish. I like that. Matt in the chat says Jaden Schwartz comp. I like that.
Hmm.
I think that might be a little high end, but maybe that's just me. But he's sort of like in my eyes, I view Stenberg as a bottom six winger who can play center like Nathan Walker did like a
Yeah.
couple games,
Yeah.
but you really want as a winger who has a great shot. I think that's, especially where the Jaden Schwartz pick is pretty good and is honestly like really strong for his size at 6 foot flat. He's pretty strong, I will say. Maybe not a power forward, doesn't really play like that, but kind of could if he wanted to. Probably, that wouldn't benefit his skill set of being a speedy offensive threat. But yeah, I'd say with Stenberg, he's got some more ways to go, and in the SHL just was not really getting deployed. They really value veteran leadership there and just veterans in the SHL, and so Stenberg just wasn't really earning much ice time. And it's really, unless you're like Swedish Jesus, they're really not going to play you if you're 19 years old, or
Yeah.
20 years old. So the move to the AHL was really good. I'd like to see him have another year in the AHL at least. I think he's still got a little bit of a ways to go. And I think probably he'll cap out as maybe middle six contributor, but probably a third line guy. I'm trying to think of a Blues comparison, like currently playing. Yeah, like a somewhere between Nathan Walker and Zach Bolduc.
Hmm.
I don't think he'll reach the heights of what Bolduc showed last season, but could be a 20 goal score, a perennial 20 goal scorer, kind of like an Ivan Barbashev, honestly. Maybe not quite as physical in terms of hits, but he plays strong. Like he doesn't lose a lot of puck battles like Ivan Barbashev, so a good possession, speedy forward. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I like Stenberg. I would, he's a really, really good depth piece to have. The thing about the Blues prospect system is there's a lot of really good depth pieces to have, but I think Stenberg is one of the ones you definitely are much higher on than some of the names we'll get to here in just a moment.
Sure. Yeah, hopefully can. I mean, probably like I don't know. What do you think? Bottom six, middle six for him?
Yeah, bottom line, it sort of depends. I think it's still to be determined where he'll end up. I don't know. Based on gut alone, I'd probably say bottom six contributor, but he could be a middle six player. I think it'll take another year in the AHL before we really know the answer to that question, though.
Yeah, and he sort of plays like someone who really likes to keep the puck on his own stick, for right or for wrong, but protects it decently well. Excuse me, and is able to sort of generate some offense that way. But um, you don't want him to be a puck hog or whatever. So I think he has run into that issue at times. So um, yeah, excited to see what another year of development looks like for Stenberg, because if he can just be um, another solid, I guess, yeah, like bottom nine, like you're saying, that can be really valuable for the Blues, long term.
I almost like with his speed and his strength, I almost wish he would be more physical. It's like he plays physical when the puck is on his stick, but he just like sort of has this unwillingness
Hmm.
to check when he doesn't have the puck.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that could be the next step in his development.
Hmm.
That he could become like a more skilled Nathan Walker or Ivan Barbashev, or just the next Ivan Barbashev in that case. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a level that he hasn't felt comfortable playing with just yet.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Um, Okay, let's take it next to some guys who might be under the radar to some fans, but had some really solid seasons this year. Let's start with the guy who had, let's see, pulling up his stats here. Tomas Mercic played in the WHL this year for the Prince Albert Raiders. 65 games played, and in those 65 games had 90 points. So
Yeah,
33 goals and 57 assists, just lit it up this year. Um, he like he's got a good stride. Like he's a decent skater. Got a good shot. I didn't watch a lot of like Mercic tape this year. I don't know if you did. Um, but I mean, Mercic is a center winger guy, probably another winger. But I mean, 90 points in 65 games. Like, do you think he's raised his stock or his ceiling at all this year? Like, that's not really, that's nothing to sneeze at. 90 points.
definitely. I think Mercic definitely raised his stock. I think so if we say tier one is the Dvorsky and Snuggerud tier of like
Hmm.
future NHL star. Tier two is the future NHL contributor of Stenberg, Lindstein. Who else we talk about? Yurchek, maybe. Yurchek
Yeah.
could be a tier one guy. We don't really. Sorry, bump my mic again. We don't really know with him. I think Mercic elevating himself into the fringe, if not just straight into tier two. I think he was a tier three of like interesting prospect, but who knows? To maybe, if not just in that tier two of future NHL contributor, because yeah, 90 points in 65 games is crazy. That's really really good. In the WHL is an okay league, but that's really good for hit like for his development to see that. And you really saw the goal scoring come along. He put up 33 goals in his 90 points. So just an overall offensive like force. To me, this kind of feels like an Alex Steen. Like he plays heavy. He plays hard. He loves to take the puck. That's like his favorite move is like skate at you fast and lift your stick and just steal the puck. And then his shot's nice too. He has got sort of a Zach Boldukian or Bolduc esque shot that's just like it sounds different off the stick. And it is fun. His accuracy came along was the last thing that he really never had the accuracy, or not never.
Hmm.
But so you could see him spray shots. He not wasn't pinpoint, but you know, could hit, could definitely hit the. I don't know. I can't think of a good analogy, but got a lot better with his accuracy, and that's where you saw that finishing come along. He honestly could play more of a power forward role, but kind of doesn't. He sort of mixes between this power forward slash, I don't know, shooter sniper role. It kind of depends on the game and the game script, which is the other thing with Mercic that I think has made his develop or his. I guess when you drafted him, we did kind of know that he had different gears that he could turn on. It's just a question of with prospects or with especially draft guys, if they have different profiles like that, typically that can be seen more often than not. I feel like that's a bad thing because they might just not know who they are as an NHL player and might not have the mental and physical ability to sort of switch between different roles like that. Mercic showed the hockey IQ and showed that he was able to do so and was a fantastic pick because of it, an absolute steal in the fourth round. Um, yeah. So I mean, that 2024 draft, I think outside of the year check pick, might be one of, if not Doug Armstrong's best drafts ever, at least in terms of depth. Because there's some really interesting like tier 3 guys in there that could break into tier 2 this season. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, Mersic's awesome, and he could be like a diet Zach Bolduc or a diet Jimmy Snuggerud, um, which would be so much fun. He's got a long ways to go before he gets there. I'd like to see him play against higher level competition, but he's shown more promise than he had, and yeah, I'm so excited to see next season for him.
Yeah, you and me both. Um, the other guy that we should mention here as far as like a big season goes, Matt in the chat knows it. Uri Pekarchik. Um, he was a 2023 third round pick by the Blues, and this year in the QMJHL, which a lot of people see as one of the, um, I guess like lesser is the right word, just not as like as competitive as other leagues in the Canadian Hockey League, but played for the Moncton Wildcats. In 53 games played, had 24 goals, 43 assists, so 67 points in 53 games is pretty good. Um, Tiny grain of salt, it's the Q, but still, great season from a third round pick and Pekarchik, and so um, I think his biggest skill, or I guess his biggest selling point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, you probably have some more notes on him than I do, but just his speed and his skating, and then just like really athletic kind of guy. Um, I think, just the way he's able to sort of fly up the ice, and he's not small necessarily, but he can really move. Got a good stride, and his shot isn't bad either. I think from what I've read, at least, again, I haven't watched a lot of tape for him, but from what I've read, it sounds like a guy like Pekarchik has a better shot and has better goal scoring potential than some of his stats would suggest over the years. Like the quality of his shot seems pretty decent, but really what he's able to do with his skates seems to be his main strength. So, what do you think of Pekarchik and his sort of ceiling or timeline moving forward in the blue system?
Yeah, he is so freaking fast. It's awesome. The other thing, like he's not just fast, but his release is so quick. Like
Yeah.
there was a goal he scored where he had the puck on his backhand. He was in the high slot, flipped it over forehand, and went like high glove side for a goal in the span of like less than a second, like maybe 1 second. Like it was so his release is it the speed at which he can generate. Let me start over. The speed he can generate getting the puck off of his stick is very fast, but the speed of which he can get the puck off his stick. So not necessarily how fast he sends the puck, but how fast the puck leaves his stick is like lightning quick. It's awesome. And he's, yeah, like you said, he's a fast guy to go along with it too. He'll be entering his age 20 season, as you said, had a fantastic season in the queue. And I think you're totally right that he could have more in there than he's shown. Pekarchik isn't just getting like Blues fans excited. Pekarchik is very sneakily like getting on sort of the NHL like
Yeah.
sickos radar of being a prospect that could have a major year and break into that tier 3. I don't know if he's in that tier 3 yet. I think there's still a lot of stuff, especially when he doesn't have the puck, that he really does not do well. But I think you could really see him break. He's sort of like at the top. To me, he's at the top end of, or wait, not in tier 2 yet. Excuse me. He's at the top end of tier 3 of like interesting prospect. I don't think he's quite in that like gonna be an NHL player level yet. But next season, not only could he break into tier 2, he could elevate himself to the top of tier 2, and who knows where he could go from there. So this could be like, he really has the chance to elevate himself to like a Yurachek level prospect, if not already there yet. But I would say for now, fourth line is still probably the projection for him as sort
Hmm.
of the Alexei Toropchenko replacement.
I
I
was
think
gonna
they're
say,
very,
yeah,
very similar.
yeah. You say speed and like some of the ways we were describing Pick-Our-Cheek. I mean,
That he
that
just
reminds me
turns
of
it on
Torpo.
so randomly. He's like literally Torpo 2
Yeah.
to Torpchenko.
Yeah. Um, okay, so what are some other names we can do? Maybe a couple quick hits here. Like, what are some other prospects you really want to highlight? Who you see maybe not as like can't miss, but you think really deserve their spot in a conversation of really like the top of the blue system.
So I'm gonna take a second now to go back through some of the chats we've had.
Yeah.
So the first one I saw was Zach Dean from Jacob. Good to see you back in the chat. Dean definitely. So Jacob says, I'll just put it on the screen here. Jacob says he was hurt and didn't play a ton of games, but he was in Bolduc's draft class, so now is the time. And definitely for Dean, it's an all or nothing year for him. That is it's his time to show up
Hmm.
or be shipped off or essentially. Zach Dean has been a quad A player. I guess he did just finish up his age 22 season, so maybe he could have another year of eligibility. But he was part of that Ivan Barbashev trade, so he's had some time in the blue system and not necessarily been super exciting. He's a center, so you at
Yeah.
least have that. As the Blues do not have center depth at all. Zach Dean is the guy you'd probably look at, but there's a lot there's a lot left to be desired in terms of he just doesn't really have a tool that's like his standout thing, um, which is sort of what you need. He's just not really producing in the AHL. Last season he had 4 points in 11 games. The season before that he had 14 points in 9 games. So probably the best thing would be his like playmaking ability and his ability as a passer, but that just hasn't really come along. So it's a make or break season for Zach Dean. Another guy who I think it's a make or break season for, but had a much better year is Nikita Alexandrov. Was kind of an AHL demon, had 49 points in 48 games. He is also a physical shooting winger. He had 21 goals in his 49 points. Um, which was third on the team, tied for second on the team actually with uh, Devo, but in less games too. So maybe is more of a goal scoring like capable player, um, Alexandrov. But yeah, I think for those two guys, I want to say that it's like their year to. And Alexandrov has had some run in the NHL, but just was not up to speed mentally. Um, and so for them, I would say those are two names. I think it's kind of make or break. And then we also got some questions from Matt about some of the other defensemen, Louvre Butchinger and Hunter Skinner. So Hunter Skinner isn't a player I can really speak much about. He just kind of isn't on my radar, to be honest. Um, I think Lealouf at this point is like and I have no idea how to say his last name actually. I think that's incorrect, but I think he's like a injury replacement type guy on the third pair. He's fine. He won't get really any points. And he can play okay enough minutes, but probably not NHL caliber. Honestly, I feel kind of similarly about Matthew Kessel. These are just quad A players that
Hmm.
Kessel had a great year playing in affiliates, but did not have it in the NHL. And I don't know that he just the game looked really fast for him, and that's typically a bad sign. You'd like to see him turn it around, but this is like year 2 or 3 of him in the NHL now, and um, yeah, Butchinger is interesting. He played. Let's see. Uh, was he a Springfield guy as well? Yeah, he was. He was.
Yeah.
So Butchinger is more interesting because he does provide, I think, a little bit more offense. His stick handling is really interesting and kind of, excuse me, fun. I see him mostly as more of like a lottery ticket wild card. Maybe he goes out and has a crazy season and could be like a fun seventh defenseman to um, who is defensively okay and offensively can turn it on randomly. But yeah, just to respond to some names in the
Hmm.
chat, and please throw more in as if you guys are watching live. Would love to respond um, to all that we got. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you wanna throw in Yeko and Stancil as well?
yeah. So Stancil had a big year in the World Juniors. Was like the leading point getter, and just looked awesome in the AHL. I think um, was good, but didn't have a lot of time to really. He played most of his season in WHL. I think Stancil. Let's see, he is 20 as well, but he just finished up. Or no, he's recently 20 actually. Wow, so he's going to enter his age 20 season.
Hmm.
Wow, I thought he was a year older. Okay, so he just finished up his age 19 season, and in the WHL had 57 points in 58 games. In Springfield, only 1 point, but only played 10 games. I think he could be like 2 years out, but I think he could be a great supplementary bottom six winger.
You're talking
Um,
about Stancil here?
Stancil, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and he is um, sort of, oh, I don't know, sort of Nathan Walker, Matthew Joseph but he's very physical and he's a fun watch. I think Stancil's a guy I recommend watching and would
Yeah.
like to see him crack the NHL in a couple years. And then the other name was Yeko.
Hmm.
So yeah, Yeko also can play center, and I think I think you could call him a center. Doesn't play it fantastically, but you know he is an interesting playmaker. Also played in the WHL, 53 points in 56 games. Did put up 7 points in 7 games in the World Juniors. So, and then 21 points in 17 games in the like IHJ like recent tournament. Um, so I think there's with Yeko, there's an interesting playmaker in there. Um, but he really likes to hit too. He still just seems kind of raw. Like it still just doesn't really feel like Yeko has much of a calling card to his game. He's just very like this ball of energy on the ice that can be prone to giving away the puck sometimes. But I don't know. I think with Yeko, you definitely could have an interesting depth option at center. That's just like a more talent or more skillful Oscar Sundquist, which
Mm.
is kind of a fun idea. I would put him. I would put all these guys pretty firmly in the tier 3 of like fun wild card. Um, I don't think any of them. I think all of them need a big year to elevate themselves into tier 2.
Sure.
But yeah,
Yeah, a couple names I'll throw in here as well as guys that I have got my name on, and you'll probably notice a theme here that they're all defensemen. I love defensemen. If you're A longtime listener, that's no surprise. Lucas Fisher, who I didn't realize is still only 18 years old, and he's like playing big minutes in the OHL. Left-handed defenseman guy. He plays for the Sarnia Sting. Just really young guy, but is relied upon, and like people seem to give him a lot of minutes. He's not small. He's 6'3", but he's still mobile, and I really like his sort of athletic ability. Some of the production we've seen from him as well has been nothing to sneeze at. 51 games, had 37 points this year, 15 goals, 22 assists. That's in the OHL, a great league. So I really like Lucas Fisher. He's a name that I've got my eye on, a second round pick from this most recent draft in 2024. So someone I really like, and really looking forward to seeing how he develops and how he progresses as he gets a couple years older. Because if he's putting up those minutes in the OHL at 18, then in a couple years when he's 20, I'm really excited to see what he's doing. Um, another guy I'll throw in here, who was another second round pick, another defenseman picked in the second round in last year's draft, Colin Ralph. More of a local guy, right? And played for Kirkwood High. So what I like about Ralph is pretty much only his defense. He's not necessarily um, like an offensive threat at all, but he's just huge, and I really like how he defends from what I've seen of Ralph. So probably definitely a bottom four kind of guy, maybe a third pair guy realistically, but someone who I see have I guess playing solid minutes at the NHL level at some point. So I think he deserves a mention as well. Quentin Burns had a pretty good year, the best year offensively by a Blues defenseman or I guess Blues defenseman prospect. 66 games played, also in the OHL, had 49 points, 8 goals, 41 assists. So not a bad year at all from Quentin Burns. And so 19 years old, and I like how he defends. I think he's mobile, good with his stick, good with his positioning, and so I think he deserves a shout as well. And then someone who maybe we can talk a little bit more about here at the end is I realize we've only talked skaters, and this guy probably deserves his flowers in maybe that second tier. Colton Ellis had a fantastic season for the Springfield Thunderbirds. Played 42 games, 922 save percentage, had a record of 22, 14, and 5, goals allowed average of 263. And then in 3 playoff games, had a 933 save percentage and a 232 goals allowed average. Going back to last year, he had in the AHL had a 924 save percentage in 16 games, and in the ECHL in 21 games had a 923. So like the past couple of years has been really consistent at a pretty high level, and kind of is like making a case for future backup goalie, maybe sooner rather than later. So Colton Ellis, another guy that I wanted to throw into the conversation here. Any thoughts on some of those defenseman prospects I mentioned, or do you want to just jump right into Colton Ellis for a couple minutes?
I kind of don't have any thoughts on the defenseman prospects, so I do kind of want to just jump into.
Yeah,
I
let's
think
hear it.
you put that all pretty well. Yeah, Ellis is definitely a tier 2 guy for me. He is a goalie, so it's hard to know because he's a goalie and goalies will goalie.
Yeah.
But I think he showed a lot of really promising stuff. Went 22, 14, and 5 in Springfield, which maybe you would say is not totally what you would want on a really good Springfield team, but they were more of an offensive team than a defensive team. I think defensively had some deficiencies. So a 922 save percentage is fantastic. Ellis to me is okay. So the broader discussion about the Blues prospect system is that there's what they're going to do, who they're going to keep around, because they can't have this many guys on the roster. Not everyone is going to be playing for the St. Louis Blues, even if everyone we talked about here is like a fine bottom sixer. They're not all going to be on the Blues because there just aren't enough roster spots. Ellis is very similar to a Joel Hofer to me, except for the fact that Hofer is like 6'5" or something massive, which typically is not preferred because it's just harder to be agile at that size, which you really need to. Hofer's shown the ability to be better than his size in that way, but kind of the overarching discussion of this Blues prospect system that's interesting to me is um, who they're going to keep around and who they're not. And I think Ellis is really, really similar at the ability of playing Hofer. I think Bennington's their guy. I think Bennington is he's a Jersey guy. He's a Stanley Cup winner.
Mhm.
He's a promotional material. Everything like Bennington in my mind is sticking around.
Yeah.
Um, Ellis has come on the last 2 years and has really shown out, and I think in that sense is proven that he's ready for a backup role, probably like somewhere around like maybe 30 games. So maybe not a full backup role, but you could always try him out. So maybe they want to keep Hofer around for one more year, but obviously Hofer still doesn't have a contract, which is a kind of a big deal coming up. So I'm really curious to see how the roster crunch works out. But in terms of Ellis, he's just very smart and pretty athletic too.
Mhm.
He doesn't get beat a lot based off of wrong positioning. He just gets beat off of sort of silly mistakes like not having his glove high enough or not covering the post enough. Um, but in terms of like positioning within the crease, which never mind. I was gonna make a jab at Connor Hellebuck, but um, in terms of positioning within the crease, he's not going to have a lot of ugly goals let in, but he will have some that he would want back for sure. But yeah, he looks like to me, Colton Ellis looks like he could be Joel Hofer. He could be a
Yeah.
very, very solid NHL backup.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's sort of our state of the union when it comes to the Blues prospect system. Some of the top names. Obviously, not enough time to really dive into every single name in the system. But with the draft coming up at the end of the month, I think it's on the 27th of June. I want to say, I
I
could be
think
wrong,
so.
but it's sometime in late June. We're going to continue to do draft previews. We're hoping to have a couple special guests on, some familiar faces for those of you who have been watching Note News for a while, to sort of break down both the Blues prospect system as a whole and where it has some weaknesses or areas for growth, but also we want to do some draft preview, look at some names that we think the Blues could draft in the upcoming draft. Should they even keep their first round pick? That kind of stuff. So we'll definitely continue to do some draft preview, and then after the draft, we'll have a recap as well. Um, and then after that, free agency is coming up. It'll be here before we know it, and so the offseason is in full swing, and we'll definitely continue to provide coverage of it. We go live twice a week, and so we'll continue to be here to preview and recap and speculate on the Blues offseason. But real quick, Alec, Stanley Cup, who do you got? Panthers Oilers rematch. Who do you got? How many games?
My heart wants so bad for it to be Edmonton. I am cheering so hard for Edmonton this series, but I'm taking Panthers again in 7.
I'm taking Oilers in 7. I don't think Connor McDavid will be denied again, 2 times in a row. So we'll see who's right in the end, pal. But this one feels
It's
like
just
it's
like
gonna
it
be
just
7.
feels like yeah, it feels like it's gonna go long. It feels like this Panthers team is like better than they were last year though, and
They
the
both
same is
are. They
yeah,
both
it's
are.
the same is true for the Oilers. But
Yeah,
gosh,
it'll be
it's
a
gonna
great
be a good
series.
series. It's gonna be a great series.
Awesome. So we'll be here to recap that as well at times. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to help us out. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen. Those ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts do go a long way. They really do help. And then follow us on socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We post announcements for when we go live and graphics and reels and all kinds of great stuff. So be sure to check us out on all those platforms. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Note News. We'll see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.